Now it's been amazing. I mean, connecting with guys like you that can have, conversations like this, which are always a ton of fun for me. That doesn't happen without, kind of getting out there.
Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Congratulations, you have found the go-to resource for aspiring entrepreneurs, providing insight from the world's most successful, relatable, and interesting entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is hard. That is why we created findyourfreedompod.com to compile all the resources you need to find your own freedom. We just finished recording with Dustin McClone. Dustin discusses all that he learned in corporate banking and with nonprofits to now bringing his family business to the next level. Now, as CEO of McClone Insurance, Dustin gives incredible insight for aspiring entrepreneurs about the true meaning of hustle. This is a great episode for aspiring entrepreneurs to learn from. Don't forget to give Find Your Freedom a like, a share, and subscribe, or follow us. Thanks so much. Yo. Welcome, Dustin. Super excited to have you on with us today.
Yeah, likewise. Excited to get going.
Dustin, welcome to Find Your Freedom. Let's start with LinkedIn. So we found you on LinkedIn. When I scrolled to your page, it just kind of popped off the screen, and I thought, man, this is a guy that I gotta get to know a little bit better. So after checking you out a little bit, we invited you onto the podcast, and we just kind of want to start off with you're obviously utilizing LinkedIn as a good way to connect and get yourself out there. What have you found about LinkedIn in your experience, and what do you use it for? What do you think others can consider leveraging the LinkedIn platform for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so, LinkedIn has been, like so many things, it's been a journey. I've been on LinkedIn in some which way, shape, or form for quite a long time. But, to me, the platform is so unique because it is more, it's obviously more business focused. The people that you can engage with there, frankly, are more willing to engage back in many cases because it's a lot of like-minded individuals.
Yeah, like everyone's interested in networking, it seems.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there's this feeling of, true, community on the platform. And I would say for many years, I was the professional stalker, right? I had a profile but I didn't really post. I wasn't really getting my message out, but, as a way for me to, connect with people and find with people. Yeah. And, really starting, maybe a year or two ago, I started to realize the power that it could have, to also share the message. And, like so many things in life, you kind of start with this imposter syndrome of like, well, does anyone really care about my message anyway? I mean,
right. Yes.
Is anyone going to listen, and is anyone going to care? And what's been amazing about it is what you realize is, look, there's nothing that I'm putting out there that is rocket science, right? I mean, I'm not Elon Musk or, somebody like that that's getting really, revolutionary topics out there. But,
yes.
What I found is, well, what was I doing on LinkedIn? Well, I was checking out other people's content. I was checking out what other people were saying. One, because it refocuses your thinking. Two, it kind of allows you to see who do you really want to connect with and who can you learn from. And so I, kind of took the leap of faith, so to speak, to say, you know what, let's give this a shot. Right. And what's the worst that can happen? I mean, the reality is with social media, if I tried it for 6 months and it was a miserable failure, it would just disappear eventually anyway. So,
right.
What did I really have to risk other than some time, energy, and effort? So, spend some real time trying to think about what that was going to look like and feel like. And, now it's been amazing. I mean, to your point, connecting with guys like you that we can have, conversations like this, which are always a ton of fun for me. That doesn't happen without, kind of getting out there. And, my background, it really started in sales. And so, to me, networking was always kind of a thing for me that's kind of deep seated, but historically that meant in person. And, what you quickly realize is the world is pretty small and there's a lot of cool people you can learn from outside of just your close geography if you're willing to get out there and have some conversations.
Yeah, taking it from in person to online is a huge game changer, and you've obviously found some breakthrough and a lot of value on LinkedIn. So when I was browsing your LinkedIn page, I noticed, I go, okay, wow, this guy's a public speaker, he's a podcast host, he's an insurance guy, he's this guy's doing it all. He's taking his 24 hours and doing a ton with it. How do you find time to get all these things in that you do? And then what are you currently allocating the bulk of your time towards?
It's a great question. So, first kind of the time management piece of it, right? So, each one of those things has happened over 20 years, right? So, it's not like you wake up one day and you just start doing each one of those things. What it really is just taking each day, 1% at a time. And, so, one of the things we talk a lot about in our company, and now I've talked about more publicly, is this mindset of hustle. And, really the idea is, if the concept behind it is pretty simple, right? So if you've ever been to like a youth sports game before, right? You hear all these parents yelling from the stands, hustle, 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 right? And all the kids like look up at you like, well, duh, dummy, I already am, right? Like, what do you want me to do?
All day on Saturday, that's all I was yelling at.
That's exactly right.
Soccer game with my daughter.
And I'll tell you, I'll change your perspective at every youth game now going forward, because that's all you'll hear is all these parents yelling hustle and the kids not changing 1 ounce of behavior.
Yeah, I don't think she knows what it means. She's 6.
That's exactly right? But what's interesting about it is it's not until you, and so I was also a youth basketball coach, right? So, one of the things you learn is it's not until you define the behaviors of what hustle is that people actually understand what that means, right? It's running down the court, it's diving for the ball, it's, boxing out if you're playing basketball, or, what are the details that you're getting into. And so, where this kind of light bulb went on, this was, back about 6 years ago. And I had just been named CEO of my core company, McClone Insurance. And I was also a youth basketball coach. My wife's also a youth basketball coach. And we were kind of talking about how we could release this dormant potential in our basketball teams, but also, I'd taken over, it was our family business, and it was a great company, but it had gone a little stagnant, and I just saw so much potential for it. And it was, how could I kind of release that potential? And it was like, well, hustle, right? I mean, if a team that hustles regardless is always going to outperform, right?
Right.
But I realized the same thing happens in work and business. Is it's not until you define what hustle is, right? If I went to our team here at McClone and said, hustle, 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 they look at me the same way, right? Well, duh, dummy, I already am, right? But it's not until you to define the behaviors of what that is. And so, to your point, Doug, of like, how do I kind of organize my time? The core with hustle, it really starts with identifying what's really important to you. Because the reality is, and you see this this isn't something I created, right? I've learned from super successful people before me, right? That accomplished much greater things than I'll probably ever accomplish. But what ultimately it comes down to is they carve out the same day and really start with a great clarity as to what they want to be and who they want to be and where they want to go. And you eliminate everything other than that. Right. It's so easy in this world of distraction for you to get pulled in 1,000 different directions that have nothing to do with where you want to go.
Right.
But it's just adding one day at a time. Right. Like, so, obviously you guys have been taking off with your podcast and it's going great. And, we did the same thing apparently about the same time, which is kind of cool. But I'm sure you guys felt the same thing when you first were doing it. It's like, whoa. I mean, how do I pull this off? How do I record it? Is anyone going to listen? But
yeah, we're like, what's an MP3? What's an MP4?
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going, millions of people have figured this out. I'm sure we can too.
That's exactly right.
In the beginning, it was like, wow, okay, there's a lot to this, more than we thought.
But now, now that you've done it, right. And you're still going to, the next 20 episodes will be better than the last 20, right? You'll continue to get better. But the idea being is, now you know how to do it, right? Now it's a learned skill. And now you can say you're a podcaster, right? And so, to me, really it's about getting that clarity as to what you are. So like, for me, I kind of have always laid out, I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. I want to be a business leader. I want to be a community leader, in that order. Well, the reality is that means there's certain things that aren't in there.
Yeah.
And, there's, as an example from a, sacrifice perspective, I don't really have hobbies. I mean, my hobbies are, work and family and
your kids
and kids. And I mean, like, I just don't have that. And that's okay with me, right? Like that, I'm not saying that as a martyr. I'm saying that my hobby is what I do, right? Like I love podcasting. I love leading McClone. I love what we're doing with Hustle, right? Those are all things that fulfill me. But for some people, that would be mind numbing, right? That's not what they want to do. And that's okay. For everybody, it can be different. But to me, that's what it really, and then it's that relentless behavior of each and every day, just saying, okay, what am I going to do today? And if I'm not advancing towards my goals that day, well, then what did I do? Right. And creating that clarity.
I love that. Yeah. Just, it sounds like clarifying your vision first and foremost is how you kind of attack it. And once you have that clear vision, then you know what you're doing. You just go out and you execute. Now, in your own words, what does McClone do? I read on your website, we help our clients protect and scale their business. So how do you do that? And what is McClone?
Yeah, great question. So here at McClone, we're an insurance broker. We're based here in Wisconsin, but we work with companies all over the globe. And so we do from business insurance to manage employee benefit plans to HR outsourcing and consulting to retail, personal insurance and things like that. But really, at our core, what we are is we believe that we can protect businesses, organizations, and families better than anyone beyond insurance, right? And with a smile. And the idea is that when you look at our industry, I guarantee anyone that's listening right now, the minute they heard the word insurance, they're like, why the heck are they doing this to us, right? Why would they bring an insurance guy on? And I promise I won't talk much about insurance.
We love insurance.
Yeah.
We love insurance.
For sure.
My mom's is a lifetime insurance broker.
Okay, there you go.
And so, yeah, we have it in the family.
All right. Well, so you're the 1% then. There's not a lot of us in the world, but no, in all seriousness, what really we're focused on is we feel that a lot of times in our industry, organizations are net takers. It's about what can I take out of an organization or a community, and we believe we can be net givers, right? We can protect and help scale businesses by, quite frankly, just doing our job really, really well. Right. Whether it be small businesses, mid-market, or global businesses, everybody's being asked to do more with less. And so, what can we do to be that good partner?
That's so interesting. I think it's so odd that something that everyone needs and every business has is something that people that they would be averse to talking about. It's kind of an odd thing. Yeah. It's funny. I was talking the other last week with a friend who was investing in some businesses, and he was talking about how he was buying some plumbing companies and was looking at getting into buying some like waste management, recycling companies also. It's just like, he's like, yeah, man, I just really target these businesses that people have no interest in and that people don't want to talk about. And they do really well, and they're inflation proof, recession proof, like all these things. And I never even thought about it, but not that insurance is, on that level, but kind of in a way, like you're saying, yeah, it's just like something people really don't talk about, but everyone has it and everyone uses it. And so I think that's a really, really cool thing. You have such an interesting background. You were in banking. You were a director of a Boys and Girls Club, United Way. Can you talk us through kind of how you ended up in the insurance business?
Yeah. So really, I ended up by birth. So my grandfather started McClone Insurance, and then my father took it over in the 80s. And then now I'm running it. And so, I really got into it by birth. But, really as I went to college, I always knew I probably wanted to be in this space. It was just a matter of, did I want to be here in the organization or not? And,
right.
To your point of the banking and the nonprofits, really a lot of that came really from the foundation of always wanting to learn. Mm-hmm. So, I was super fortunate in college to, work for one of the largest banks in our state, and in kind of a training program that taught me a ton in a really short period of time.
That's awesome.
And that really kind of built my foundation from there. And so I'm still on a bank board today. Nicolay Bank, they're at $8 billion publicly traded bank, kind of a super regional as I say with everybody, each of those experiences, I feel like almost like I'm cheating because I'm learning more from the people in the room than I feel like I'm ever contributing. I mean, right. From the nonprofits to whatever. But a lot of it is just finding ways to get outside your comfort zone, right? When you talk about the Boys and Girls Clubs in the United Way, certainly a core of that to me was, how do I give back? How do I make an impact? I mean, Jonathan, I'm not quite as far as what you're doing over in Haiti, but I'll try. I'm going to keep trying. Now I got somebody to chase. So there you go.
Every effort to just make a positive impact. I love hearing those stories.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. I think the way that you talk about your background and your history is such a healthy way. And I think a really good kind of perspective for aspiring entrepreneurs to look at, you were going into those experiences literally looking for what can I be pulling out of this and always having it be an educational experience. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurs that we have on this podcast have kind of a similar thought process. Like, I'm going to get as much as I can from every single experience that I'm going through, and really kind of sucking out all of the opportunity, no matter where it is. Do you feel like a lot of what you learned in those early years are applicable now to you running this insurance company? 100%.
I mean, it's that mindset, a lifetime learner. One story I've shared a few times. I mean, there's a number of stories I could share, but one in particular. So I was working in this bank. I was just in my last year at college, and basically my job at that point was to kind of put financial analysis together, and then basically experienced people then would take them to the customers and have the conversation. And I'll never forget my two bosses came up to me. They had a meeting in 1 hour. They had to leave in 1 hour, and they're like, "Hey, where are the reports?" And my face just went white because all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I didn't do it. Like I haven't even started them. I don't have them ready. I don't think I've ever gotten them done in an hour before, but I don't know what to do. And it was one of those times where, when you think back, I was so nervous. I was like, man, they're going to walk me out of here. It was a very high test environment. And I just kind of took a gulp and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. I screwed it up. Like, I don't have it. Like I'm going to bust my ass right now and we're going to put it together. And I'll never forget it. They ended up offering me a job a few months later, once I graduated, which I ended up not taking, but they basically said that was the turning point, right? They said, you could have so easily said, oh, I forgot, or oh, I lost it, or did you give it to me, or whatever. And the fact that you just owned up to it.
Responsibility.
Which at the time, I mean, honestly, I'd love to say it was some drip of wisdom, but it wasn't, right? It was just kind of one of those things. But
you have good instincts.
Well, but it's, those types of experiences, right? So, I'm 22 years old, kind of in that high test environment. And so, I think there's an interesting way to approach these things. If you're looking at it just, what can I take out of it without thinking about what you can give, right? Then that can be too selfish and you can approach things wrong. But Jonathan, I think you're exactly right, is realizing that even things that don't seem linear, right? I think far too many people, they feel like everything in their life and in their career is linear. And why do this if it doesn't lead to that? And certainly I'm not a proponent of being random completely either, right? I mean, have some mindset to it. But, a lot of times those kind of adjacent turns that you don't think are going to have really anything to do with your long-term. I mean, at that point, I was pretty confident I wanted to be in insurance. And so, did I need to be in a bank? I mean, yes, it's financial services, but did I really need to? Well, then as it turns out, that led me to be a director on, multiple banks now. And that's helped me learn not only about banking, but also about how to grow, McClone and M&A and a lot of other different kind of categories that, I probably wouldn't have learned if I wouldn't have, thought outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one that hasn't been mentioned enough, just that we all kind of expect the journey to be, not all of us, but many of us expect the journey to be linear.
Yep.
And there's so many twists and turns along the way. And as guys in our position where we are in our careers, we've gotten to see that firsthand. But I think it's important for the younger folks that are just starting out and listening to this to understand that that's how it's likely to be for you. It's going to be some twists and turns, and it's not going to be a perfectly linear path.
For sure.
So going back to the getting started phase. So can you take us so you left the banking industry to take over the family company, McClone. Getting started is such a big challenge. What was that decision like for you? You said you were kind of thinking that you would one day rejoin the family business, but weren't sure and took some other twists and turns. What was that decision like? And is there a cautionary tale that you can share from that early phase of taking over the company?
Yeah. So what I'll tell you is when I came back, I wasn't taking over the company. When I came back, I was starting as an entry-level lowly sales guy.
Okay.
So, to me, it was really about, from a leap perspective, I was doing well. I was actually in the insurance space. I was just working for a company at the time. And really what it came down to is I started to envision, again, where I wanted my life to be and where I wanted to raise a family. I had been recently married. And what it really came down to is whether it was this business or a different business, I knew that I wanted to have the most control over my growth, frankly, my income, as I possibly could. And I didn't know if it meant that I was going to run the company someday. At that point I was 24, 25 years old. We were a decent sized organization. Who's to say I was going to be able to grow into that position. Right. But I knew I wanted to be in a role that the harder I worked, the more I drove my own results, the more I'd be rewarded. And so that's where sales really kind of drove me in. And I think, anytime people are making kind of career choices and things like that, there's a natural leap of faith that exists for sure. And for me, it was, I was coming back to join the family company, which was exciting, but I was actually in a division that at that time we were terrible in. We were very small. We didn't have a good brand in it. We had basically one other person doing that. And, here I was coming back, taking a pay cut, and for what, right? To just kind of try something. But one of the things that I think is most important when people are making these decisions, whether it's a career change or whatever, to the point of even linear, I also think there's a bit of kind of aggressive patience that people need to have, right? So I'm not a patient person. I'll never say I'm a patient person, but if you're aggressive in driving towards your goals, but patient for the result, that's usually where the best things happen. I think far too often, people, they just give up too soon. If you look at, a sprinter, right? A sprinter at the very end of the race, right? They stretch to get the tape. The problem is in business or in life, we don't know where the finish line is, right? There really isn't even a finish line. And so it's like, and I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing. How many times have you seen someone that you're like, man, you were so close. And then that's when they give up. And, you look at, all these successful people. I mean, how many people that are like, man, you are so successful. I want to be like you. And you're like an overnight success story. It's like, yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah.
We laugh because it's comical because for anyone that's been down that path, you talk about, LinkedIn, right? I mean, the reality is that's, built up over time. If your own personal networks, those are built up over time, your businesses, et cetera. So,
right.
To me, I think that's the biggest thing. Anytime you're making any switch like that, and it certainly was for me, I wasn't making it for the next year of my life, right? I was looking for it for the next 10, 20 years of my life. And now it turns out more.
Yeah, I think as I'm hearing you talk, what I hear is that you really gained a lot of knowledge from some kind of, like very corporate style trainings, and that helped build your foundation. Do you feel that that's kind of an important piece of why you're successful? Is that something you recommend for aspiring entrepreneurs?
100%. So the L in hustle actually stands for learn from others, because, to me, to me, like if I go back to hustle for a second, the H in hustle stands for hard work, because nothing good has ever happened without hard work. And even that, people don't really understand exactly what that means. But I mean, it takes ridiculous hard work to accomplish anything worthwhile. But then as you get beyond that, U is for unrelenting, so never giving up. S is smarter, not just harder, right? So you got to, find ways to be efficient. T is you got to take chances. L, you got to learn from others. And E then is enjoying the process and the journey and things like that. But
very cool.
The key with the learn from others is and you guys have seen, it's a cheat code.
Yeah. Because
there's people that have done these things before us. We're not the first people walking around trying to do these things.
Right.
And So to answer your question, yes. I mean, to me, you think of mentors, coaches, training programs, and countless of those, coaches and trainers and mentors have shaped who I am. I mean, ultimately, everything that I talk about in Hustle came from that, right? I mean, it's because you just ask questions, and when you, so much so, one of the things I think is interesting about, learning from others, there are so many people in life that might pay for someone to cut their grass or someone to be their personal trainer or things like that. But then people are unwilling to invest in their own coach or own development other than that, which to me just seems absolutely crazy, right? When you think about what you're trying to do. And, I know a lot, for entrepreneurs, right? People that want to be entrepreneurs, it's a lonely run, right? I mean, if it's really easy to kind of get into a silo and feel like there's nobody there for you. So what do you need? You need coaches, you need mentors, you need a community, you need others you can lean on, because if you do that, that's who you turn to. Because especially as you start to build teams, right? I mean, the old adage, it's lonely at the top. It's real, right? Because I mean, nobody on your team gives a crap about what you're concerned about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So, and not because they're being spirited. It's just, that's not the role.
Yeah. That really is kind of where the vision for Find Your Freedom came from initially. Is like, we had so many struggles early on. I had 2 years of wandering around in the desert, kind of just like trying to figure it out on my own. And, and Doug and I both kind of had this long corporate struggle that we were just like, this doesn't really fit us. Like, we're not happy in this. And, we gained a lot of skills and experience there that led us to be successful as entrepreneurs. But man, it was like such a hard grind early on. And yeah, you feel kind of alone in that. So us putting Find Your Freedom together, and that's kind of the goal for what the website we're building is, really giving all those resources and community, we'll call it the FYF community, all these successful entrepreneurs sharing their wisdom and their learnings from all of the, all the mistakes that they made. And, the goal is to even make a course, have each of our guests make a course about, like, here's what I think is the attribute that made me most successful. And I want to give you the skills. I want to share these skills with the aspiring entrepreneur community. And because it can be so brutal to not feel like you have that. So we're hoping to give the next generation kind of a little bit better of a foundation and fast forward all of their successes. Is there a certain trait that you feel is like your superpower? What would you say that you would attribute most of your success to?
Ultimately, what I've seen it, and this is really where I built the Hustle framework, was it's through a kind of a series of learnings and behaviors that I just repeat like crazy. So, I'll use the example of actually this Hustle leadership business that me and my partner created. And, really what it started with was, we just got to put in a bunch of time and figure out exactly what we want to do and just go do it. Right. And as dumb as that sounds, man, there are so many people that have great dreams and never put a pen to paper. Right. And people are often so hesitant to do anything because they want it to be perfection. Right. And, I talk a lot about make progress, not perfection. There's nothing perfect. There just isn't. And, the reality is just get out there and then iterate, learn, fail forward, learn from it, go from there. So, what really has helped me in a lot of ways, and even this kind of next iteration for me, what's been interesting with Hustle is I was kind of building out the framework and the trainings and stuff like that. It wasn't actually meant to be anything. It was just meant for our team here at McClone. And then all of a sudden I started talking about it to people, and they're like, well, could you teach our team about that? And I'm like, yeah. and I'm like, no, I don't have the time. I got a day job. Right. Like, but I love to coach. I love to, see people succeed. Right. And so I was like, all right, maybe there's something there. And so, Chris Burns, my business partner, and I, we were kind of talking about it, and he's like, I think there's something here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and he's a serial entrepreneur, marketing expert, things like that. And so he's like, I think we can do this together. And, so kind of the rest is history. But, to your point of kind of the secret weapon, to me, it's, by having this kind of framework, even for me personally, as I would go through the trainings, I found myself realizing I was even lying to myself on some of this,
Right.
Because we do that to ourselves, right? We spin ourselves in a circle. And so in a lot of ways, that's kind of become my secret weapon of just kind of going back and saying, all right, am I really living by this or not? And that self-reflection is huge.
Yeah. Having the process is really critical, but also just forcing yourself to make sure you stay in the process. Yeah, I think that's super important. And it sounds like maybe your superpower is creating badass acronyms.
Could be
crushing the acronym game.
Yeah. I love the hustle and what you have behind that. I didn't even know that you were utilizing it as an acronym, but hearing you go through it, I think really gives a lot of the vision to what you are trying to do in your company and now with your leadership programs. So I really, really love that.
Definitely the best acronym we've had so far here. By far. Hands down.
So I don't know if you know this, but I'm also uber competitive. So I love winning at literally anything. So if I won something today, that's all I'm hoping for. That's good.
It seems like you've pulled a lot of knowledge and seeked out a lot of knowledge. What would you say your go-to resource is for building up this knowledge base that you've had?
Man, that's a good question. Everywhere. I love to shortcut it. I mean, so here's what I'll tell you. So I say I read books, but I cheat a little bit. I'm an audiobook guy for sure. But to me,
got to find what works for you.
That's exactly right. I mean, audiobooks, podcasts, these are great formats for you to learn from some really smart people, that, I guess audiobooks have in some ways existed for a while, right? But in the podcasting world, it's a whole nother space that I think is just absolutely tremendous. I also think still going back to the old adage of networking. So I can't tell you how many times. So, like as an example, I'm part of a group of people that run similar insurance brokers like us. Mm-hmm. And, we get in a room and, some cases we have an agenda, some cases we don't. And I tell you, a lot of times when we have these meetings, especially when they're virtual, you look at your day and you're like, man, I don't have an hour for this. I just don't. We don't have an agenda. I got 75 things to do. I'm trying to hit my goals. I got to go do this. I just got to go. And I tell you what, now in that group, at least without fail, every time after that hour, I'm like, man, that was great. There's one thing that I took from that is just changing my thinking or changing my focus that, I would have just kept running down this stupid path. Yep. But because of this, I went this other way. Now I will say there are times where you'll be in a group like that and you'll realize this is a waste of time, right? They're not all great.
Right. Got to find that right group that you can mastermind with, that you really can keep learning from.
That's exactly right. Right. And then continue to challenge yourself outside that thinking. I was fortunate. This was about 3 months ago. I got to go with a group of people to this event, and so from a size perspective, we're in the top 1% in our space, in our industry. But the reality is that still means there's people that are 100 times bigger than us.
Right.
Right. So, and so you have this vision of where you want to take this company and, what you can do. Well, all of a sudden I'm surrounded by organizations that are literally hundreds of times bigger than ours. And actually there was one guy that I was kind of talking to, and, we were just kind of talking through different things. And he asked me basically what my goals were of, growth and, what I saw the company when I hung it up and all that. And he just challenged me straight out. He's like, you are putting way too much of a ceiling on yourself. What? Why? You're 41 years old.
Right.
You got tons of runway. Why are you putting and initially you're almost pissed off, right? Because you're like, I'm not putting a ceiling on myself. I'm shooting for the moon, right?
How dare you?
Yeah, but it's things like that when you surround yourself just with different people and different perspectives. Again, it's not all going to be perfect, but to me, it's that seeking out the knowledge from others, and however you do that, right? Whether that be events, whether that be in person, whether that be podcasts, whether that be audiobooks,
yes,
whatever works for you. But that constant seek. I mean, you see it. I mean, the most successful like the easiest statistic, the most successful people read the most books.
And those could be audiobooks.
That's exactly right.
So just to remind everyone, the L from hustle is learn from others. So I hope everyone's picking that up. We get so siloed, and especially work from home, working remotely, you can really get caught up in your own home, in your own little home office, working away, and lose out on all the knowledge of others out there in the world. So finding a way to connect with others, whether it be through LinkedIn, whether it be through joining mastermind groups locally, but finding a way to connect with folks that are where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 years, and they will help you rip the ceiling off. And you got to be prepared to hear that when they tell you, because you may get a little defensive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to be prepared to hear that feedback, and then go take it and apply it in your own life and in your own career. So you talked about, you've made a big point about learning at each stage of the process, learning from others. What would you say is the single decision you made along the way that you feel gave you the biggest ROI in terms of fast tracking your career and success in your career?
Whew, that's a great question.
It's a big one. Take your time.
Yeah. Single biggest thing that is fast tracked. So I got one. This is kind of a different perspective, but so I was young in my sales career, and I was seemingly working really hard. I was putting a lot of hours in. I was recently married, just had my first kid.
Seemingly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a key word. You're going to see why. And my wife sat me down because she was then pregnant with our second child, and basically had the heart to heart of like, would you want to be around? Like, do you want to be a husband? Do you want to be a father? And like in my head, I had the lens of, well, I was working really, really hard so that I could provide. Right.
Right.
And so kind of had a discussion. I'm like, all right, well, I probably need to make a change. What does this mean? But at the same point, I had significant goals and significant things that I needed to tackle in my career that I was like, how do I balance this? And I think, the word kind of work-life balance, I think gets used a lot. I think, if you talk to, a lot of people, one of the most successful guys I know runs one of the top auto dealers in the country. He said, no one's ever going to accuse me of work-life balance. and the reality is he has a tremendous relationship with his family and his kids and the community. Right. But it's because it's harmonized. It's integrated into multiple things. But anyway, so we having this conversation, and she's like, something's got to give. And I'm like, all right. And she's like, here's the deal. I don't care when you get into work. All I ask is just, can you be home by 6:00 every night? And I understand there are certain nights where you have networking events and things like that. I'll even give you a pass on those. And then Fridays, can you just be home at 5:00? You can work Saturday mornings, you can work Sunday nights. But just those little boundaries. And as dumb as that sounds, to this day, 20 years later, I'm still home at 5:00 every Friday. I still am home many days at 6:00. Now I might pull up my laptop and work once I get home. Right. But, the idea is what that forced me to do. And the reason I say seemingly was working hard is I was putting the time in, I was at the office and I was, doing work, but it wasn't until I kind of had to squeeze in other priorities that suddenly started to realize I was wasting a ton of time.
Right.
And not intentionally, right? It was just, why am I spending time on this crap or that? Like how do I 80-20 this to really focus on what's really going to, drive my results? And so to me, it seems like an odd way to say what was my breakthrough, but it was actually when I started to create more clarity as to who I really wanted to be, and then create that scarcity in my schedule.
Yep.
That I had to be crazy thoughtful about where I spent my time. And so, I'd leave the house at, 4:30 in the morning. This is before you could do as much remote work. Right. So, and that to me was fine. I could get in early, then I was, still there for my kids. I was still there, for my wife. But I tell you what, when you're getting up that early to go into work, you think a lot about where you're spending your time.
Right. You're like, this better be worth it. I better maximize this productivity here. Yeah. We call that designing your lifestyle. A lot of people really talk about that, and kind of, it doesn't always, you can design your lifestyle for how you want it to look in the future. And that's where, like, I feel like, one of the situations I got really fortunate in, I was, when I was working 70, 80-hour weeks in hospitality, in my prior life, I was working towards, the whole motivation was, I was thinking, this is not sustainable. Like, how am I going to spend time with my kids when I have kids, whenever I get married, and kind of putting in the grind. And I think a lot of young people that I talk to really don't get that fact of, like, you need to plan what your life looks like in 5 years. Work now to put yourself in position to make your life, to make it an opportunity to have your life the way that you want it to be. Design your work ethic, what you're building right now to put yourself in position. Say, if I want to not be working 70-hour weeks in, in 5 years or 10 years, whenever I do have a family, I better be grinding right now. I better putting all my, eggs in the basket right now, because I do want to have that future life. Some of the mentees I talk to right now, they're really kind of just getting the fact that, like, oh, you know what? Like, if I make some sacrifices here, that's really going to build and compound into some future successes. And I think that's kind of a switch that people need to turn on, that there's going to be some sacrifices early on. And if you do front load it, it can get you in a position to be, really in the driver's seat that you want later. For sure. I mean, and the key point you said there was sacrifice, right? Like, I think a lot of times, I think there are some, younger people today that might even buy into the designing your lifestyle, but they're not putting enough time in to really crush their goals. Right. Right. Yeah. And we lie to ourselves. And, this, if you think about, like, what is hard work, right? Like, part of hard work is putting in the time. You talked about, your 70, 80 hours a week. The reality is not that that's what you want to do forever in your life, probably, but you probably learned a ton by doing that. Right. And discipline and focus and how to grind through those times. What's interesting is, and I'm not saying everyone has to work 60 plus hours a week, but 60 plus hours a week is kind of like the badge of honor, right? Like, you're really cranking it. Yeah. And, but what's interesting is there's been studies that have shown this about how much we lie to ourselves, because, so if you could guess, what percentage of people in the US say that they work 60 plus hours a week? Any idea? Maybe 50%. Okay. So it's about 38%. All right. So just over a third. Do you want to know what percentage actually do? It's 3.5%. Yeah. Is it? One tenth of those people. That stat is incredible. That's one of the things I talk about all the time. Like, these people are talking about how they're working hard as it's like a good thing. It's like, for a certain period, for a finite, to get me from here to here, I'm going to have to climb for a little while to get there. But man, to keep saying it like it's a great thing. It's like, like, I'm, grinding at 60 hours a week. And it's just like, I did that too. But I at no point was I super proud of it. It's like, I'm doing this for a purpose. That's exactly right. Well, and it's applying to what, right? And again, everyone can apply whatever hours they want. But what to me was interesting is when people say how much hours they're working, they've never done the math. Like, I can't tell you how many, people I've coached over the years, right, where they're saying, I'm working endless hours. And all you do is I give them a time tracker, right? So for 2 weeks, track every 15-minute increment you have for 2 weeks. If you guys have ever done this, I mean, it's the biggest light bulb in the world. Right. And all of a sudden you do the math, be like, how many hours do you think you're working? And where do you think you're spending the time? Right. And all these, light bulbs that go on. And it's, again, it's not about just putting in hours to put in hours, right? It's also about recognizing, where are you putting those hours, and, what are you doing in them? Because, you can spend a bunch of time and not get anywhere too. Yeah, I totally agree. I love your outlook on entrepreneurship. And here's a question that we ask every guest that comes on. How would you personally define entrepreneurship? I would say it's the endeavor to identify problems that other people have and find a way to solve them. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's such a personal question. And I love, the way that you just illustrated it. It's providing so much opportunity and future through this work. And I love the acronym that you have that kind of walks you through some of the things you have to take into account if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur. So I think this was sort of an unplanned, awesome synergy that that you're having. So we've got the hustle and the FYF just working together to really.
That's exactly right.
I think I've really, really enjoyed having you on today, Dustin. The wisdom and insight you had from kind of providing your background story to now really kind of coming back to the family industry and taking it to the next level. I think it was a really, really powerful story. Thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Where should people are going to want to reach out to you? Where should we send them?
Great. Yeah. So certainly if they're listening to this and they like podcasts, Hustle Nation podcast is my podcast. Otherwise, if they're more interested in hustle, hustleleaders.com, or frankly, you can just find me on LinkedIn. That's usually the easiest place. If they need help on the insurance side, risk management side, McClone.com is where you can find us there. So LinkedIn is usually, similar to you guys. That's usually where I connect with plenty of people, and that's always fun for me too.
Dustin, I love your outlook, man. You provided a lot of gems for the audience today. And my biggest takeaway is just prioritizing, identifying what you want out of your life, and then taking those steps to get there. So thank you so much for being with us. It's been a great episode, and good luck on everything.
Check out Hustle Nation podcast. It's awesome.
Go check it out.
Congratulations. You have found the go-to resource for aspiring entrepreneurs, providing insight from the world's most successful, relatable, and interesting entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is hard. That is why we created findyourfreedompod.com to compile all the resources you need to find your own freedom.